You think you know Ford? Behind every success lies a graveyard of failures. Uncover the dark side of an industrial titan, Ford's forgotten failures. What if I told you that the man who put America on wheels nearly derailed his own legacy with mistakes so big they almost destroyed his empire? By the end of this video, you'll uncover the shocking story of Henry Ford's forgotten failures, the bold moves that backfired, the stubbornness that cost him millions, and the lessons every entrepreneur needs to know. Stick around because the resolution to these missteps may hold the secret to building your own unstoppable success. Before diving into his failures, let's set the stage. Henry Ford wasn't just an innovator, he was a revolutionary. In 1908, he introduced the Model T, a car so affordable and efficient that it transformed the lives of ordinary Americans. The Model T wasn't just another vehicle, it was a symbol of freedom and progress. Suddenly, farmers, factory workers, and small-town shopkeepers could travel farther and faster than ever before. Ford's vision went beyond creating a car for the elite. He wanted to build a car for the common man, and he succeeded. By implementing groundbreaking assembly line techniques, he slashed production costs and made the Model T accessible to millions. His approach wasn't just innovative, it was revolutionary. The assembly line turned manufacturing into a high-speed process, reducing the time to build a single car from 12 hours to just 90 minutes. This efficiency allowed Ford to sell the Model T at a price that was within reach for most Americans. By the 1920s, Ford Motor Company controlled over 50% of the global automobile market. It wasn't just a business, it was an empire. Ford's influence extended far beyond the automotive industry. Towns, industries, and even lifestyles were shaped by his vision. Roads were paved, suburbs flourished, and a new era of mobility transformed the way Americans lived and worked. Henry Ford wasn't just building cars, he was building America. But beneath this glittering success lay the seeds of potential failure. Ford's incredible confidence in his own genius was both his greatest strength and his Achilles heel. His unwavering belief in his vision led to bold decisions that changed the world, but it also blinded him to the need for adaptation. What happens when a visionary refuses to evolve? The answer lies in the cracks that began to form in Ford's empire. Ford's first major misstep was his refusal to let go of the Model T. By the late 1920s, the automotive market was undergoing a seismic shift. Competitors like General Motors had begun to change the game. GM introduced a new approach to car manufacturing, offering stylish, customizable vehicles that appealed to the evolving tastes of the American public. Buyers no longer wanted a one-size-fits-all car. They wanted variety. They wanted luxury, they wanted color, comfort, and innovation. But Ford didn't see it that way. To him, the Model T was the pinnacle of automotive design. It was reliable, affordable, and efficient, everything a car needed to be. In Ford's mind, there was no reason to change what was already perfect. His infamous quote, "Any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants so long as it is black," became emblematic of his refusal to adapt. While Ford was stuck in the past, the rest of the industry was racing into the future. By the mid-1920s, the cracks in Ford's empire began to show. Car sales were declining, and the public was losing interest in the aging Model T. Meanwhile, GM was capturing the hearts and wallets of American consumers with its Chevrolet brand. Chevrolet cars were modern, sleek, and offered in multiple colors. For the first time, Ford faced real competition, and the results were devastating. Between 1920 and 1927, Ford Motor Company's market share plummeted from a dominant 55% to a mere 12%. It wasn't just a financial blow, it was a wake-up call. The automotive kingpin had been dethroned, and the once unshakable Ford empire was on shaky ground. It wasn't until 1927 that Henry Ford finally acknowledged the need for change. The company ceased production of the Model T and introduced the Model A, a car that was modern, stylish, and offered features that appealed to contemporary buyers. While the Model A saw success, it came too late to reclaim Ford's dominance. The damage had been done. Ford's obsession with the Model T serves as a cautionary tale for entrepreneurs. What happens when innovation turns into stagnation? The refusal to adapt can take even the greatest visionaries and leave them trailing behind. But as we'll see in the next failure, Ford's stubbornness extended far beyond the cars he built. Henry Ford believed he could not only manufacture cars, but also mold society. In 1914, Ford introduced the $5 workday, a groundbreaking move that doubled the average wage of factory workers. To many, it seemed like Ford was a hero of labor, a man who valued his workers and wanted to ensure they shared in the prosperity of his company. At first glance, it was a revolutionary step forward. Productivity soared, worker loyalty grew, and Ford's factories became the envy of the industrial world. But beneath the surface, there was a darker side to Ford's intentions. Ford didn't simply give workers higher pay out of kindness. He wanted to control their lives. Alongside the $5 workday, Ford implemented a sociological department tasked with enforcing strict moral standards. Investigators were sent to employees' homes to ensure they were living in what Ford deemed a proper manner. This meant workers were expected to avoid drinking, gambling, and any behavior that clashed with Ford's vision of a disciplined workforce. Even mundane aspects of their lives, such as housekeeping and spending habits, came under scrutiny. While Ford framed this as a way to improve the lives of his employees, the reality was far more invasive. Many workers resented the intrusion into their private lives. What started as a promise of prosperity quickly began to feel like a form of authoritarian control. Those who failed to meet Ford's standards risked losing their bonuses or, worse, their jobs. The $5 workday wasn't a gift, it was a leash. This approach also alienated Ford's executives and advisors. Ford's insistence that he alone knew what was best created a toxic culture of micromanagement and mistrust. The sociological department became a symbol of his heavy-handed management style, and the resentment it caused began to undermine the company's morale. Worse still, Ford's methods drew public criticism. What had initially been celebrated as a progressive move began to be seen as paternalistic and invasive. Newspapers ran stories about the lengths Ford went to control his employees, and his reputation as a benevolent employer took a hit. By the 1920s, the sociological department was scaled back, but the damage to Ford's image and the culture of his company had already been done. The failure of the sociological department illustrates a key lesson for leaders. Innovation and success can't justify overreach. Ford's attempt to micromanage his employees' lives may have temporarily boosted productivity, but it ultimately fostered resentment and tarnished his legacy. Stick with me as we explore the next chapter, when Ford's overconfidence led him to a jungle in Brazil and one of the most expensive failures in industrial history. If you think controlling workers' lives was extreme, wait until you hear about Fordlandia. In the 1920s, Henry Ford set his sights on solving a major problem: rubber supply. Rubber was a critical material for tires, hoses, and belts, and its demand was skyrocketing. Instead of relying on established suppliers in Southeast Asia, Ford decided to create his own supply chain. His plan? Build a self-sufficient rubber plantation in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon. It was an audacious vision, but it would soon turn into one of his greatest blunders. Ford purchased a massive tract of land in the Amazon rainforest, an area the size of Connecticut, and set out to create not just a plantation, but a utopian society. Fordlandia, as it was called, was designed to mirror the small-town America Ford idolized. He built homes, schools, hospitals, and even a dance hall for workers. Ford envisioned a thriving community where his workers would live wholesome lives under his watchful eye. But the project was doomed from the start. Ford underestimated the complexity of the Amazonian environment. The rubber trees, planted too close together, were ravaged by pests and diseases endemic to the rainforest. Local workers, unfamiliar with Ford's rigid rules, clashed with the management style imported from Detroit. Ford demanded adherence to strict schedules, banned alcohol, and even tried to impose American-style food on the workforce, serving hamburgers and canned peaches instead of local cuisine. The workers rebelled, leading to riots that destroyed parts of the settlement. Nature itself became an adversary. The soil, unsuitable for large-scale rubber production, couldn't support the plantation. Transportation of goods through the dense jungle proved expensive and inefficient. Despite pouring millions of dollars into the project, Fordlandia produced little usable rubber. By the late 1930s, the venture was abandoned, leaving behind a ghost town of empty buildings and overgrown fields. The entire experiment cost Ford over $20 million, nearly $400 million in today's dollars. Fordlandia was more than a financial disaster. It was a cautionary tale about hubris. Ford's failure to respect the local culture, environment, and expertise led to a catastrophic outcome. His belief that he could impose his vision on an entirely different world ultimately proved to be his undoing in this endeavor. The Fordlandia debacle highlights a critical lesson for entrepreneurs. No amount of ambition can substitute for understanding. Ford's relationship with his workers reached a boiling point in the 1930s, as the Great Depression deepened economic despair across America. At a time when labor unions were gaining momentum in their fight for better wages, working conditions, and job security, Ford took a hardline stance against unionization. Fiercely anti-union, Ford believed that collective bargaining would undermine his authority and disrupt his vision of total control over his workforce. To enforce his will, Ford hired Harry Bennett, a former boxer, to lead the service department, a euphemism for a private security force that would become notorious for its heavy-handed tactics. Bennett and his men were tasked with maintaining order within Ford's factories, but their methods often crossed the line into outright brutality. Surveillance, intimidation, and physical violence became common tools for suppressing union activities. The most infamous clash between Ford and labor unions came in 1937 during the Battle of the Overpass. This event occurred at the Rouge plant in Dearborn, Michigan, where union organizers from the United Auto Workers, UAW, planned to distribute pro-union literature. When the organizers arrived, they were met by Ford's security team, who proceeded to attack them in full view of reporters and photographers. The resulting images of bloodied union members shocked the nation and tarnished Ford's reputation further. Ford's iron-fisted approach to labor relations backfired spectacularly. Public sentiment shifted in favor of the unions, and the UAW gained widespread support. The incident at the overpass became a rallying cry for workers' rights, galvanizing the labor movement across the country. Despite his resistance, Ford was eventually forced to recognize the UAW in 1941 after years of mounting pressure and additional strikes. What makes this failure so striking is the irony of Ford's earlier reputation as a champion of the working class. The introduction of the $5 workday had once positioned him as a progressive industrialist, but his refusal to adapt to the changing dynamics of labor relations painted him as out of touch and authoritarian. The battle with unions revealed a critical flaw in Ford's leadership: his inability to see his workers as partners in progress rather than obstacles to his vision. The lessons here are clear. Even the most successful leaders must learn to adapt to societal changes, listen to their workforce, and embrace collaboration. Ford's stubbornness cost him not only his reputation, but also the loyalty of the very people who powered his empire. But as we'll see, even these failures couldn't entirely erase his legacy. So, what can we learn from Henry Ford's forgotten failures? Despite his missteps, Ford's story is one of resilience. He eventually embraced change, modernized his factories, and introduced groundbreaking models like the Ford 5.8. His ability to recover from failure cemented his legacy as an industrial titan. But perhaps the greatest lesson is this: no matter how brilliant your initial idea, success demands adaptability. Ford's stubbornness cost him millions, but his willingness to learn allowed him to stay in the game. For entrepreneurs today, the message is clear: innovate, adapt, and never stop learning. Now it's your turn. What's the one lesson from Ford's failures that resonates most with you? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of the entrepreneurs who built America.